Welcome back to another episode of the HigherUp podcast. Today we're joined by Baxate, a content creator with well over 500,000 followers across all of his social media platforms, documenting his journey as one of the founding engineers of tech startup brev.dev and now as a member of the team at tech mogul NVIDIA due to the recent acquisition of brev.dev. He also makes general self-development and life advice that he says he wishes he had when he was a younger man. Baxate, man, thanks for coming on the show, dude.
Dude, it's an absolute honor. I've interviewed you, I think almost an interview or a year ago today, and so to now be sitting on your podcast, which has had a meteoric rise in the past couple of months. Not only that, your social media platform in general has seen you've had a crazy year, and so it's an honor to not only know you but to be able to come on your platform.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. In light of that, I was going to catch up with you about a few things, but I think that what you just said is a perfect segue to the first question. Why do you think that people who don't have a social media brand or a personal brand in 2024 are missing out?
I have talked to all of my coworkers and people who are generally, have high aspirations, whether it's in a startup, whether it's just making money, whether it's a number of different things. I don't think you should do it just for the money, but you made a video recently, which I actually really liked, which is out of all of the quote unquote side hustles these days, I think that having particularly a personal brand is one of the most valuable things you can do for yourself because of the low barrier to entry, right? I started on my old phone and literally just my phone. I didn't even have a microphone at the time. And because of that probably played a non-insignificant role in me joining brev.dev, which obviously is now NVIDIA. It played a non-insignificant role with meeting people like you. It played a non-insignificant role with my ability to speak for longer amounts of time, speak with confidence, speak more coherently. And so many things came out of it for me that if looking back, if I knew what I would have had now from social media alone, I would do it every single time, and I probably would have started earlier. And so I think that it's just the easiest way to level up so many different areas of my life if you put in the effort and if you're in it for the right reasons, that I think that there's nothing more again, low barrier to entry that I would recommend for people to do right now, regardless of where you're at.
Yeah. On one of your episodes of Backs of All Trades, your podcast, which go check that out if you haven't on Spotify and YouTube. Is it on Apple as well?
I think so. Should be.
Okay. It's on Apple as well. We did an episode that we referred to earlier on there. But in one of your episodes about growing a brand in 2024, you talked about how you and I think Nader,
yeah.
Nader, the CEO of brev.dev, got connected. You mentioned that there was a potential partnership that came out of a networking event because a guy recognized you because his son watched your content, basically stating that it gets you indoors and gets you in conversations because of the rise in social credibility. And while there's tons of people with shit tons of followers on social media, regardless, like you said, the unfortunate reality is if people see you and you reach out either to have them on a podcast, like you've had Frank New, incredible tech personality on the internet, when they see, you've got 280,000 followers, you've got 10,000 YouTube subs, you have 26,000 LinkedIn followers, which is crazy. I was looking at your LinkedIn, I was like, what the hell? He's got like serious tech world clout. That's badass. But there is this immediate credibility, and you just can't deny the social credit that it gives you when you have some sort of notoriety. And it seems to have opened up crazy doors for you in your career. And I mean, would you say, like you say, it plays a non-insignificant role of the reason you're at NVIDIA now, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that when I think I mentioned it on that episode of my podcast as well, but both of us now probably know some fairly quote unquote high powerful people, whether that's in the business world, in the fitness world, whatever it is. But even those people, I think that we've had a fundamental transition, and I don't know if it was necessarily when short form became really big, but definitely as social media has taken a higher level of just a larger mind space for the common people, that I call it the attention economy, which is not my own term. That's a lot of people refer to it as that. But I think that you really should think of having that level of notoriety and that level of public presence as valuable, if not more valuable, than say money capital or political capital. I mean, there are literally political people who are running who are now gonna maybe win because of and I'm not talking about the presidency, but at local levels, having a TikTok following or having an Instagram following is playing a significant role in their campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that cultivating that definitely will help you in your career and in all aspects of that, because it is that sort of instant social credibility that, whether it should matter as much as it does, that's up for another discussion. But at least in my own life and what I've seen from other people, it matters a lot.
Yeah, and I think it's crazy. There's this weird wave, to your point about politicians and the people who are swaying votes based on creating social media pages. There's this weird wave of, number one, the importance of social media in the political climate can't be understated. It's how, unfortunately, a lot of people get their information, even though it's clipped and bited. But the significance of, like, I've seen brands turn around completely because they hire some goofball 23-year-old to run their socials, and then they go viral, and suddenly a brand from when I was a kid is now relevant again, or some small town mom and pop auto shop has 500,000 followers. Like, this stuff really has the power to change not only individuals' lives but companies' lives, political officials, if that's something you want to do. But you have to, and this is something you alluded to earlier that we share the same sentiment on, you have to get into it for the right reasons, because one of the other things you said in the podcast, and I'm not blind to this as someone who's been able to make it a job, is the odds of you making it a career are not statistically significant. It's the opposite. And even the odds of you making money on it are slim. So speak to, like, how did you know when you started creating, like, this is what I love, therefore I can talk about it every day and I can show up for something every single day, multiple times a day, without the possibility of getting paid?
Yeah, I think that for me, my motivation is probably different than a lot of people's. But I was in a fraternity in college, and I ended up, kind of growing into myself a lot during university. I think when I came onto campus, I was, 18 years old, not that confident. I had school going for me. That was about it. And through college, I figured some things out. And maybe that was early, maybe that was late. That's not really part of this discussion. But by the time that I was a more senior member in the fraternity, I was seen as a wiser figure. I was a figure that a lot of the young men in that fraternity would come to me for advice about girls, advice about, personal finance, advice about internships, advice about their resume. And as you'll notice, those are a lot of the topics that I end up talking about on my platform. So when I moved to California for my job, I missed that. Like, that was actually something, that feeling was gone. And so I was craving it again. And I had a couple stints on the internet prior, nothing to this level of success. And so when I was doing it, it was talking to my former self, which is how I talk to those younger men. But I knew that I could have an impact. And the motivation for me is reading that comment or that message that says, hey, I got an internship because of you. Or, hey, I'm going to go study computer science because of you. Or, hey, I'm finally getting back into the gym because of you. Those types of comments were so fulfilling to me that's really what motivated me. And so if I was getting one of those comments, I was happy. And that allowed me to continue doing it. And then once I started making money, it starts off small and then eventually it becomes hopefully not as small. But it was almost like an afterthought. It was like, oh, wow, I can make money from this.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at any big, even going back to the YouTube days when that was like really big, that's how every big YouTuber, there were a ton of the early YouTubers before the monetization even existed, and they built really massive platforms. And again, it was like, oh, wow, this thing now that I've been doing for fun can make me money. And I think if you can frame it like that as almost an afterthought, it'll be a lot easier. We talk about this all the time, but separating yourself from the outcomes. And so I could be posting for years and never make money because that was never my intention.
Yeah, that's dude, that's so important. I think when people want to do big things, like if you want to get a large social media following or you want to build an incredible body, you talk about this in your training approach, right? When people ask how you did it, well, I've been training for 8 years, 9 years. Like, that's the secret, is time on task over time. And if you have a goal like being as jacked as you are, or building a social media of 500,000 people, you have to understand that the time horizons on those goals is abnormal at times. Like, I think you and I probably, and I'm not blind to the fact that we might be a little bit of an anomaly in terms of our growth on social media, because my 5th video ever popped. But for some people, it takes a year and they get a few thousand here and there. And that's another thing, like, celebrate the milestones. You will grow along the way, but that meteoric growth that we talk about is, for some people, it's 90 days in and they're an overnight success. For some people, it's 9 months. So you really have to love what you do. You have to be alarmingly consistent, which I think is 90. That's the quote that we've talked about. 90% of success boiled down to the obvious thing for an extraordinary period of time. And a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people live in a state of delusion, which you talk about a lot. And people are like, oh, bro, you're shitting on my dreams. Fuck you. Like, why would you say that? So speak a little bit to, I love something you said in one of your videos, something to the effect of most hyper successful people had extreme competitive advantages, unwavering focus, and what was the third one?
Um, Extreme competitive advantage, unwavering focus, and let me remind myself. You're quoting me now, and I
Brilliant
couldn't-
execution.
Ah,
That
yeah,
was the last
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah.
I have it pulled up right here. I just couldn't read it because I'm
Yeah.
blind. So unwavering focus, brilliant execution, and a extreme competitive advantage. But a lot of people, I think, in our day and age, are say like, "Oh, I'm gonna be a millionaire. I just know it. I'm different. I just know it." So, like, how does someone get out of that mindset? Because it really is a bullshit mindset.
Yeah. I first of all want to acknowledge that a lot of that, right? You're not alone if you feel like that, and I think that people have probably felt like that for a very long time. But I do think that social media and the just general instant dopamine world that we live in has put you in a disadvantage. Like that's just the way it is, to where you think that a lot of the things, for example, the overnight success. If you think about an overnight success person on social media, um, even if they have 10 years of posting a lot, and this goes for not just social media, then let's say that 95% of their audience members were cultivated within the last 6 months. That means that from their perspective, that person has only been around for 6 months. They don't know the work that went prior to that. So there's almost that filter that just exists to where everybody who's at a state where you want to be, it feels like at the time they came into your life, that's when they became relevant, which it is in your own life, but you don't see the hard work they put before that. And so I think that it's almost like a switch in your brain, and it's not an easy one to flip, but it's one where you really and truly have to say, okay, yes, I feel special. Yes, deep down, I'm going to be a millionaire, billionaire, whatever it is. But that feeling is not enough, and it will never be enough. And I use the anecdote, and I wish, some things, especially for young men, I feel like I'm talking on deaf ears because it almost feels like they're going la 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 la, because I do have people in my DMs who are in their late 20s or 30s. And my favorite cohort of people that I have on Instagram, particularly, are actually the significantly older people. It's the moms and dads in their 50s and 60s and beyond.
We have a fair amount of those. Didn't expect that to happen.
I know, but I love them because they're like, basically, listen to this kid. Like, listen to this kid. And those 30-year-olds who messaged me, as I said, will say something to the effect of, I really wish I had your content when I was younger because I fell into this trap. And the thing is that 22-year-old points to those 30-year-olds and say, yeah, that sucks for them, but that couldn't be me, until it is. And so if you do not consciously look and again point to those three things, right? What is your competitive advantage? If you say, oh, I'm going to post on social media and I'm going to get 1 million followers, and you cannot seriously answer the question, why should people watch me? Then other people won't be able to answer that question consciously or subconsciously. And I think that a lot of people are in that state of, I'll call it delusion, to where, and again, I don't know if it's social media, whatever, but they've been promised, oh, you're special. Everyone's special. And, if everybody just believes, oh, I'm the 1 in a million, that statistically is an impossibility.
Yeah.
It cannot exist that way. And so if you do want to become the 1 in a million, I talk about it, another quote that I don't want to say I came up with it, but I say that 99% of the people who are, or the 1% of the people who have the thing you want are doing the things that the 99% of the other people won't be doing.
Yep.
And so I think that if you aren't doing that 1% level of effort and consistency and brilliant execution and competitive advantage, then it's unrealistic. It is literally unrealistic to expect to become part of that cohort.
Yeah, and I call this abnormalities or anomalies in our popularity growth, but I don't believe in such a thing as an overnight success. Like everything you were doing up to the point you made your first video was building you. You didn't know at the time, like, this is going to give me infinite ideas for content to teach younger men. Or when you were mentoring guys in the fraternity at Tech, like, you were doing the thing you're doing now without realizing it. When I was spending, I ballparked the number, probably 12 to 1,500 hours of my life listening to research podcasts, listening to experts in the space talk about nutrition, I was building what I have now. So it was really 7 years in the making, 5, 6 years in the making. So when people think like, well, they just posted on social media a few times and now they're popular, why can't I do that? You have no idea what we indirectly put in to be perceived as an authority, and what people see from us is that source of value, or see you as a genuine authority figure for 18 to 24-year-olds.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't want to say that either of us are perfect, because we're very, very far from perfect, and we have a lot to grow
Speak
still.
for yourself. No, I'm just kidding.
But I think what I was getting at is that, I don't know if you've seen it now, I'm sure you have. You'll see people, basically, you can call it a copycat or whatever, but you'll see videos where they have all the ingredients, but it just doesn't come together in the right way.
Yeah.
And I even see people who will, I don't want to say I coined the holding the mic thing, and I didn't do that for any particular reason. I just liked the way it sounded better when I held it that way. And now I'll see people like walking outside with their microphone, and I look and they like follow me, and they're hitting some of the similar notes and stuff, but it just isn't coming together in the same way. And I'm sure they're thinking like, well, I'm just going to try and do what he does. But as you're pointing out, there's more to it than that, right? There's the actual chefing up, if you will, of the ingredients. And I think that's where the pre-work, right? Before I ever posted my first video, that's where that legwork comes in, because that is what allows me to speak with utter confidence and use the words I do to make it land in a way that actually hopefully provides value, which is what we ultimately try and do.
Sorry for the interruption. We had a bit of a technical difficulty and we had to swap cameras because mine overheated. So we're now on the iPhone. But we were talking about the overnight rise to successes versus the work that you don't see, and what that looks like and what that process looks like. So if someone really wants to get started in building a personal brand, because you do feel it's a borderline essential for someone in our day and age to stand out, and that's something I'm huge on, is how do you set yourself apart? Because frankly, the bar's never been lower. But what are a couple of tangibles you would recommend if someone wants to just start creating content? How do they get out of their own way and get going?
Yeah, absolutely. So, pardon me. I think that everyone, I've been asked this question a number of times, and I know that we both actually recently gave speeches at different local universities, which was a super cool experience. And this one was an entrepreneurship-based course, and yet the most common questions I got by far were about building social media presence or a personal brand. And I've also had individuals who book, one-on-one meetings with me, and they ask similar things. And I think the general consensus is, oh, but I'm not special enough, or I'm not as successful as you are, so what would I talk about? And for me, I think that value can come in a number of different ways, whether it's education or entertainment. Maybe you're just really funny. Could be, motivation. You have a sick life, and just showing that off in a way that hopefully comes off still as authentic, so that people want to try and achieve that, whatever it is. For me, the talking head content is the lowest barrier to entry, because I think that's one where you can post a video literally while you're watching this. You could pause on the podcast right now, go record your first video and post it. And for me, I say that you are the niche. I think a lot of people ask like, oh, what would my niche be? What would I talk about? And there was one individual who booked a consultation with me. And he was like, yeah, like, I'm just not as successful as you, like, I've had a lot of struggles getting to where I am. Like, I'm an engineer at JP Morgan Chase now, but, I'm helping support like my mom and my brother right now, because, his dad unfortunately like left, and basically he became the man of the house like pretty early. And I was like, dude, that's an incredible story.
That's
like,
your story.
Exactly. And so I was like, look through the list, the catalog of experiences you had, because actually your story of becoming a software engineer from a disadvantaged position is way more common than my story. Like, there's way more people out there who are hungry for that content to figure out, when you don't have a college guidance counselor who's telling you, go study this in college, go take these classes and all that stuff, and you figure that out on your own, that is way more relatable than even my story. And so I think that looking through, again, the experiences that make you, and the somewhat humbling experience is that you probably aren't as special as you think you are. Yes, you're one of one, you're unique, but the things that you overcame, other people absolutely are dealing with those same problems. And so focus in on those. And if you want to go the education route, that was just the easiest route for me, because then it's like, what are the lessons that you've learned just living your life and trying to dispense those in a way that are, able to be perceived and able to be received by whatever your future audience ends up becoming. And I think that to me is like the easiest tangible way, is literally look through and say, hey, what are the things I've learned on my 16 years of life, my 18 years of life, my 20 years of life, my 50 years of life that I had to sort of figure out on my own. And then talk to your former self, because everybody knows who they were, and your former self, there's probably 100,000 of them on whatever platform you pick.
At least. And you are the niche is a great way to look at it. And I think a lot of people, I say all the time, so much of your life could be drastically improved if you were just constantly challenging your perspectives. Like, a lot of life is not what happens to us, but the vantage point we view it from. So that guy simply, you said one thing that shifted his whole perspective. Oh, my struggle, my story is my content, and you're not special, and that's what makes it special. That's what makes it so great. Is there are so many people just like you, just like me, who can relate. And I also think there is a genuine, this is my theory, my hot take as to why creators like you or maybe myself have done well, is I think there is sort of a yearning in the social media market for normal people, dare I say, right? We're coming out of the era of the loud, hyper unrelatable fitness and social media YouTuber, the what's up guys? And I've never jived with that, because I don't relate to you. And I think people love a success story. And I think that there is a huge need for people to know that they can do these things too. They can make great money. They can live fulfilling careers. They just aren't sure. Like, I don't have a framework. And like you said, speak to your younger self. Let me be your framework. Maybe it's not a playbook. It's not what you follow directly, but it's a start.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, and I think you're on the money. I've come to the same conclusion that I would say that even going beyond social media influencers, I think people are so sick of the hyper curated, super high production value everything. And so that's why you mentioned brands who will come on social media, and whether it's a mom and pop shop or even a massive like Fortune 500 company, if you look at all the comments will be like, which Gen Z whatever intern runs this account? But people love that type of content because it's more human, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that I think so many people are like, oh, I need the perfect camera and the perfect microphone. That's a story for a different day. But again, I think that actually being somewhat lower production value, and again, feeling more authentic, feeling more real, feeling more relatable, is actually going to make you more, again, easier to be received by the person who, again, you're trying to target, which is another human.
Absolutely. Technically, my engineering skills leave a lot to be desired, but I'm an excellent communicator. I can break down problems and explain them to anyone at any level. And I also understand social media. So while there are people, many people, who understand any one of these things, there are far fewer people who can understand all three. Talk about that. What's your take there? This is a quote from your video that I loved.
Yeah. So this is an idea I've been formulating recently, because I think that a lot of people assume that they have to be the absolute best at something, which, granted, if you're the best at something, if you're the best basketball player, yeah, you're going to make a lot of money. If you're the best video editor, yeah, you're going to make a lot of money. However, I think that what's a lot more realistic is that you have a number of different things that you're hopefully, let's say, even just average at, and then find some combination of those and then get good at all of those things. But it's that combination that actually is almost like a cheat code to make you really rare. Because if you find the skills that are rare to have in combination with each other, that hopefully you already have some interest in and some backbone in, then the combination is actually what makes you the unicorn. And for me, it was exactly that. Again, there are so many engineering people out there who are way better at me, even like engineering people on social media, but maybe they're way too over-indexed on the engineering and they don't really understand the social media, which means that, again, their content is either hard to understand or it just doesn't land the same way. And so I think that if you are so focused on, I use the term over-indexing on one thing, then it's going to be, again, because of the whole like 1 in a million thing or whatever, not everybody can be the 1 in a million. Pick your skill, pick your profession. However, if you're the 90th percentile at 3, 4, 5 things, and then find where those intersect in some profession or some way to support yourself, whatever that is, then I think, you know, there's a huge opportunity there, and that's what I would sprint towards. I kind of stumbled into this, and so I wasn't thinking from day one, oh, how is my social media going to eventually play into me being at NVIDIA? That was not what I was thinking, but it did end up working at. So that's where I look back. Hindsight is always 2020, and I'm like, wow, you know, my title is senior software engineer. I look left and right at the senior software engineers, and I was like, I don't. I'm kind of intimidated by these guys. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, dude. As a guy who used to work in the IT field before I started doing this full time, I understand, and I'm sure there are people that are in IT or engineers. The communication skills and the personality. And this is not a knock on engineers, but there's a reason they're like, oh, he's an engineer type. The personality combined with your engineering asset or your skill set rather is lethal, paired with the social media knowledge. Like I really think in general, you're in your field, it's incredible that you can do both because that's how you stand out. And obviously, you have it 24 years old, right?
Yeah.
25 this year. To be able to make the money you're making and do the things you've done, I would argue, or I would be presumptuous to say, probably part of it you would attribute to your ability to talk and speak to others.
A very significant part. I think that even going back to a lot of people ask me when they come up to me. I got recognized yesterday in a Chili's in Atlanta, which is always really interesting and really funny.
Real question is, what were you doing in a Chili's?
I love Chili's. That's a separate.
That's a war crime. But all right, go on.
It's more of a nostalgia thing. That's what I cope with.
I get it.
And a question that I get a lot is like, you know, a lot of my content I'll discuss, oh, you need to work on lead code or different technical skills. And they're like, what is one piece of advice? And so I try and come up with something that maybe I haven't talked a lot about, or maybe that isn't talked a lot about, period. And the one I always come up with is to just be personable, because again, as you said, in the engineering world, it's actually pretty rare. And so, yeah, if you're going into something like sales, that's table stakes, and it actually should also be table stakes in engineering, but that means that the bar is a lot lower. And so, you know, and this, you know, don't just be confident. I was listening to your podcast where you're like, yeah, that, you know, doesn't really make sense, but at least give an air of confidence, shake people's hands strongly, speak up when you don't know something, admit it, but then come up with a plan on how you're going to figure it out. And small things that just give other people will have confidence in you. I'm probably going to make a video today because I'm sick and tired of, you know, in Slack or whatever meeting I'm in or whatever, people have their cameras off and they have no profile picture, and I get DMs from people with no profile picture on LinkedIn. I'm like, I don't even feel like I'm talking to a human right now. And it's just the more everything, it doesn't matter if you're building a, you know, $3 trillion AI infrastructure company or you're posting on social media, we're all humans at the end of the day. It's just human to human interaction. That is almost always the limiting factor here. And so we're just, you know, sacks of meat and blood who like to talk to each other, and some people like to talk to each other more than others. But that is all of society is built on that base. So I think that cannot be ignored at all. And I think that if there's one skill or one area, especially if you're lacking on it, that I would focus on, doesn't matter if you're an engineer, doesn't matter where you are, it would just be, I'll use the blanket term like charisma, but I think that that's where a lot of people could find the highest leverage in terms of improving their overall life.
Dude, I could make, you and I could probably talk about that alone for 2 hours, because in the talk I gave at Georgia State, I did a whole slide portion on communication as a skill. I think a lot of people have this preconceived notion that their communication skills are just predetermined. This is just how I talk. I don't even think they view speaking as a skill, but the reason you're listening to this is because we're above average at talking. That's really what it comes down to. And you can train it. You can hone it. Just like building muscle in the gym, it is a muscle and you have to train it. So I talk about things you can do to improve that, but it's hard to explain to someone because it is such a soft skill that a lot of the reason people are engaged with us is subconscious. We're talking about the same things that as other people, but we might just be a little bit easier to listen to. And that's one skill that I think can make you stand out. But, you know, I was going to ask you specifically for 18 to 24-year-olds, but the more time we spend on the internet, the more I realize there are people at all ages that need to hear this.
Yeah.
What are some other things that you think people can do to set themselves apart in job markets and social media, just in everyday life to rise to the cream of the crop?
Yeah. I asked this question to a group of people recently at a wedding, but I would, you know, late in the evening, I was like, what's your hottest take? And people went around, and I was thinking about mine. And I have a
risky question to ask, like 10 beers deep.
Yeah. And so I have a couple hot takes, but the hot take that I came up with is that not saying it's good. Looks matter, and looks matter a lot. And it, again, doesn't matter what field, doesn't matter if it's in the dating market, doesn't matter if it's social media, looks matter a lot. And I think a lot of people would see that, and whether we're talking about charisma, or even I get a lot of questions or a lot of comments talking about IQ, and they think that, oh, my success is determined at birth based on my IQ, my charisma, and my looks. And realistically, not necessarily IQ specifically, but your skills and capabilities in knowledge work can be improved. Same thing with charisma, and same thing in looks a lot. How you dress, going to the gym, making sure that you have small things. And I'm not talking like looks maxing, but have a haircut that suits you. If you have facial hair, make sure it's trimmed. Make sure that your clothes fit you in a way that accentuates your strengths and minimizes your weaknesses. All of these different things really matter. And so I think that was what was really interesting about COVID, and in the particularly in the SF landscape, in the startup world, and Nader brought this up, is that there was that year and a half where everyone was online, and raising money online was very weird, because a lot of how people are deciding to give somebody money for an idea is really based on vibes and confidence in you as an individual. And that's a lot harder to perceive through that one little square on Zoom. However, when you walk into a room in person and you've got your slide deck behind you, and how you're talking through it, the way that your body moves, the way that you just generally speak, and your pauses and everything in that vein says a lot more about a person. And so one of the easiest ways to stand out is to get to a stage where you are confident in your looks, because that additionally there's a chicken and an egg thing, to where if you look better, you'll feel better, you'll be more confident, but additionally, people will perceive you better, which will probably also give you more confidence. So it's not necessarily like you have to be attractive to be confident, nor do you have to be confident to be attractive, but they both just like bleed into each other pretty directly.
Yeah, dude, I always tell people that if you don't know where to start, I get the question all the time, I'm sure you do too, where do I start? How do I find my passion? How do I find my purpose? If you don't know where to start with a career or social media, start with you. Become relentless about being the best version of yourself. Get as fit as you possibly can. I mean, you're a testament to that. I've seen the pictures of you when you were a kid. Everyone sees you now 6'2", 215, jacked, but they don't know like you were pretty much the same height and 55, 60 pounds lighter.
Yeah.
The difference in like how that makes you look objectively, if you're not happy with the way you look, get ripped. Like get fit, build muscle. You will look better. And in that process, yes, you will physically look better, which will make you move different through the world. It will change your energy. And I'm a little bit of a woo-woo energy guy in the terms of like you do attract what you emit. And if you're a depressed sack of shit all the time, you're probably not going to bring a lot of really awesome people into your life. But if you're vibrant because you're confident, you might find yourselves in more doors and more rooms, having more conversations and more opportunities that you wouldn't have. But you also just learn about yourself. And I think if people can dive into self-development, I am pro self-development through reading, whether it's spiritual, emotional, mental, and of course physical, challenging your body all the time, you start to just know yourself, and then sort of inherently, and this is what I think kids struggle with a lot, I'm telling you, you'll figure it out. But that's not like a real playbook. That's not a tangible. I'm saying like, do these things and it'll reveal itself. And that's how it's fucking hard to tell a person to conceptualize that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. And even something that I've been realizing more and more, and I made a video on this recently, is really that all of these sort of like pillars bleed into one another in your life. I get the comments sometimes, and I'm not trying to, but it's just funny. I like it, but it's like, oh, bro maxed out all of his stats, right? Whether it's I post a pic with my girlfriend, or it's just like my physique, or it's some accolade in my professional career or whatever. Bro maxed all of his stats, and in reality, they all bleed into one another. And so it goes back to like the over-indexing piece and just focusing on one thing. If you are just focused on the professional, the old grind culture of work till you're dead, and who cares what you look like, feel like, don't sleep an hour a night, whatever. And so all of that's terrible, because that bleeds into all of the other things. And it's like that's not going to actually give you the highest level of success, even if you focus entirely on developing yourself professionally and you're not having any human to human interaction, then your professional career is going to suffer. And so Yes, and that's why the whole oh, you'll figure it out or whatever is so ambiguous, is because you can't say do this, then that, then that, then that. You have to be building all of it as like a house. You know, you need all the different parts for it to actually be able to stand on its own. And so I think that while you're building the base, you don't see any of the structure yet, and so you're confused because you're like, nothing really feels materially different yet. And actually, it only take, you know, for some people it's 6 months, for some people it's a year, for some people, especially if you're starting from like a negative, it might be like 3, 4, 5 years before it really comes together. But and I don't think that's like one pivotal event, right? But almost looking back, you'll realize how far you've come. And I think that's where, while you're young, you're still building that base, and that's why it feels like a lot is in flight. And I remember, like, yeah, it was a time where you're insecure, and oftentimes you just want guidance. You want somebody to be able to give you step 1, step 2, step 3, and it's a really mature thing, but also a very difficult thing to sit there and say there is no step 1, step 2, step 3 that will make me achieve my goals. Instead, I have to keep chipping away at all of these different things.
Yeah, but Baxate, you're a nepo baby. You have 2 college educated parents. You didn't take on student debt. You went to Georgia Tech. Why should I listen to you? You had every circumstance that I don't fucking have. So what do you know?
Yeah. My immediate rebuttal to that is oftentimes the people who, you know, give that comment do look up to people like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or pick your billionaire or whatever. And they were way more privileged than I was. Like, they were way more privileged than I was. And so why can you listen to them but not me? So that argument is more, just because somebody had a quote unquote better spawn point than you doesn't mean that you can't learn something from them. Because again, if that's true, then Jeff Bezos, don't listen to anything. He knows nothing about business, because at the time he started Amazon, he got a 300 grand loan from his parents, which most people won't have. The second thing is that,
Is that true?
yeah.
I had no idea about
Yeah.
that. That's crazy.
No, I had a video recently where somebody was like, "Oh, because I talk about, yeah, focus on school. I talk about not focusing on the money while you're young. Like, don't chase the money while you're young." And when I'm talking young, I'm talking like 18. Like, you should be focusing on increasing your earning potential. There was a metaphor that I really liked, and it described, you know, college, but insert your leveling up your skills when you're not making money, as pulling back a slingshot. And you're not getting any closer to your target when you're pulling back the slingshot, but you're increasing the power so that when you release it, you'll go a lot further. And I really like that, because that's what you need to think of it as. And somebody said, "Oh, so Jeff Bezos shouldn't have focused on building Amazon." I was like, Jeff Bezos went to Princeton for electrical engineering and computer science, was valedictorian, and started Amazon when he was 30. So it's like, not all of these billionaires dropped out in college, and separate. That was more on college being worth it. But nepo baby, I had a good spawn point, and I'm doing the most as I can with it. And I think that's what everybody should do. Like, did I have a higher jumping off platform than the average person? Definitely. Definitely. And I always acknowledge that. I never will claim that I'm a self-made man, that everything I've done was completely my own work. And I think that's true for everybody. Doesn't matter where you came from. If you become successful, that was probably the work of some of your, if it wasn't your family, then it might be some close friends. It might be a significant other. It could just be the society. It might be the man in your church who took you under his wing, right? It doesn't matter. You were not, nobody gets to any level of success that people would aspire to completely on your own. I think that is a completely fictitious myth. And so I'm trying to run with it. And then lastly, I think that, you know, we both look at Hormozy sometimes, but one quote that I really like by him is that there's someone who had it worse and done it better. And so regardless if I had it better and done it better, you know, there's someone that had it worse than you and done it better. So what is your excuse?
At the end of the day, you cannot argue with that. But
Yeah.
I think what it really boils down to is a lot of people have an easier time perpetuating the life that they live in now, because that's easier than change, because change is really uncomfortable. It's scary, and you will not change until the pain of staying the same feels greater than the pain of change, because both ultimately hurt, but you ultimately can either be relish in your circumstances and be justified in that, or you can succeed in spite of them. Those really are your only 2 choices. And I think when you take the emotion out of it, and we always talk about how we both tend to look at things through a pretty analytical lens, when you can take the emotion out of it and appeal to logic, things become a lot easier to do. But the first step in that is just taking ownership of, this is where I'm at in life, And oh yeah, it can get better. Maybe it'll never look exactly like Baxate's life. It's not going to look like my life. It's your life, but you can always make it better than it is right now. And for young people specifically, I know we touched on the nepo baby thing and how you came from great circumstances. I did too. I came from a two-parent household in a middle-class neighborhood and went to college, which is the next thing I want to talk to you about because I was inspired by your content around saying college matters, degrees matter. And if you look at the statistics, you cannot deny that. But there's this wave of internet hustlers that are telling people, fuck the degree. I learned everything through hustle, through life, through internet courses, buy my course. And you say, no, that's bullshit. College matters. I said the same thing, and I have a take on this, but I'm curious, like high level, what is your take on the fact that yes, college does matter and will make you more successful?
Yeah, I mean, I think that at a blanket statement, you got to avoid totalities, right? Is university literally the right path for everybody? No. Is university a scam? Universally? No. And so that's why I posted on LinkedIn recently, but a couple analytical things that you can do just from a monetary perspective to see, is this something that is probably worth it for me? And that's how much will this degree cost? What is the average return on investment for people with this degree? This is public information. And if your school doesn't have it for your major, that's probably a red flag. Most public universities will have this. Even most private universities, they want to brag about it. But if it's like for a for-profit school, they might not have it. What jobs can I get with this degree? And how hard is it to land those jobs? And if you answer those questions, then you can have a pretty well-defined idea of going into your major at your school and be like, yes, obviously I'm an individual. I'm not a statistic, but I've got a pretty good idea of where I can land with this thing. And then there's so much more to university than just the piece of paper. There's so much more to university than just the knowledge that you come along with it. As I mentioned previously, like it was a very, very formative 4 years of my experience. Now, has college gotten increasingly more expensive? Yes. And I think that there's probably a lot of administrative bloat. I am absolutely not saying that the higher ed shouldn't be reformed. I think there's a massive reform that needs to happen. However, the answer right now is not ripping off the Band-Aid and saying nobody should go, because I think that if, again, looking at the statistics of it, college graduates earn on average like far more money, like $1 million+ a year average more in their lifetimes, which far exceeds virtually any student debt that you can have. The average student debt is 30 grand. And so a lot of people will talk about these 300, 400 grand degrees, whatever. Yeah, I'm sure they exist. And yeah, you're borderline stupid if you go out and study a degree that won't make any money for 400 grand a year. That was your decision. Now, is it moral that a 17, 18-year-old can go make that decision? Probably not. But at the end of the day, you weren't forced to go into that. And so the average student grant is 30 grand, or the average student loan is 30 grand, and you, on average, make $1 million more in your lifetime. That's pretty hard to argue with.
It's objectively impossible to argue with, and I think people fail to understand that your experience is not the average experience. It is not the statistical experience. Our experience, well, technically, I guess it's statistically average because we did the things that statistics lean themselves towards. But the point is, there's a lot of bitter people when I made that video about college fucking matters. And you talk about it all the time. There's always people, oh, I'm not even using my degree, or I took on a bunch of debt, or I didn't go and I'm making 150 grand a year. That's fine. You're the exception, not the rule. And dude, that was such great advice you just gave about, and I get fired up about this because everything you just said, look at the ROI on the degree, look at what jobs you can land, look at how hard they are to land. My degree is very specialized. It's professional sales. There's only 30 schools in the country that offer a professional sales degree, but they taught me how to communicate, how to conduct myself in a room. You mentioned earlier the importance of something as simple for a young person to look somebody in the eyes and shake their hand firmly. We had a whole class, 90 minutes, where the professor lined us all up and we shook his hand until everybody got it right. And that seems so silly in the moment, but it's so significant. And the major that I was in had right there on their outside the School of Business. Average sales major makes $68,000 year one, has 5 job offers out of college. You are far better off not chasing your passion for sociology because that's something that you like. You are, this is just a hard truth, better off finding something that you like that can make you money. And this is a segue into a great quote that you have. You say in a video, I genuinely think the advice of following your passion is terrible advice, and it leads people away from high-paying, fulfilling careers. You can like what you do. I liked sales. I got lucky that I could monetize what I'm doing now, But that's not the case for everybody. And if this never happened for me, I would be fulfilled in sales because I'm helping people, I'm making a difference. And I'm sure you share that sentiment. So just talk a little bit about your school of thought around don't follow your passion, because I think the end of that quote is you'll end up broke in most cases.
Yeah. I think that a lot of, and I got to borrow on somebody who I really like, Scott Galloway. He's a marketing professor at NYU Stern, but has done a couple companies, took a couple of them public, then broke a couple times.
Love Galloway.
Yeah, and he has a lot of good commentary on this. And then additionally, I recently read a book, So Good They Can't Ignore You, which I really like by, I think it's Cal Newport. But the idea that there's some nebulous thing out there that you're meant to do, and you'll just love it to do it every day from the moment you wake up, you go to sleep, and it's about finding that thing, I think is like, for some people, sure, but again, it's the exception. It's not the rule. And a lot of times, I think that the actual fulfillment, and even if you want to call it passion, comes from some level of efficacy and actually just like being good at something. Like you have to be good at something to really enjoy what you're doing. And it doesn't matter if it's, skateboarding, right? If everybody who went out there and got on a skateboard and just ate shit and was like, you know what? I'm not passionate about this because that sucked. Well, you didn't even get good at it yet. How do you know if you don't like it? And so people who do that will then get good at it and they'll enjoy it. And then that might become a hobby or a career, whatever it is. But you had to get to some level of sufficient skills before you actually enjoyed doing it. It's the same for careers. And so I think that in reality, passion actually comes on the back end of putting in a lot of effort into something that there are signs, right? There are signs that you might be good at something or that you might enjoy doing something. And it's important to focus on those. Like there's a reason why you went to go study sales and I went to go study computer engineering. And both of those ended up working out for us. But even then, people switch majors all the time. And there are ways where you can switch. You can have whole career shifts as well into something that is closer to what you want to do. But in reality, if we look at like what people like to do or passionate about, I would even argue that the passionate degree or the passion jobs of whether it's like becoming an actor or becoming a YouTuber or a rapper, whatever, a lot of those people like the idea of those jobs. But if you looked at what it took, again, behind closed doors to do those jobs, they probably wouldn't be able to do them either, because what they want is the money that comes along with it, the fame that comes along with it. Playing video games all day is not a job. Like, that's not a job. That's just a fun thing to do. Like, a lot of people would say, oh, what are you passionate about? Like, okay, for a lot of people, it's like eating and smoking. Okay, that's not a career. And so I think that in Scott Galloway's book, I think he talks about it in The Algebra of Wealth and The Algebra of Happiness. But accounting is pretty boring, right? A lot of people would be like, oh, accounting. But the man who becomes very good at accounting and then owns his own accounting firm and then becomes, best in class of his either, local community or whatever, he's the best accountant, will make a shitload of money, will be cooler around his peers. People will laugh at his jokes more. He'll have more dating prospects. He'll be able to support his family having like a luxurious lifestyle. Yeah, he probably likes his life, like he probably doesn't hate his life, and he did accounting. That was really boring. So how did he get to that position? It wasn't because he woke up when he was 16 and said, oh, I just really want to become an accountant. It's because he became really good at that thing and had a level of proficiency that made him worthwhile. And as, in that book, he was so good they couldn't ignore him.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people also believe that they don't like something and they just don't like it. But in reality, you don't like it in most cases because you're bad at it.
Yeah.
The only way to get good at something is to suck at it first. And a lot of people that you see who are at the top of their game in whatever their respective profession is simply had the humility and the lack of ego to accept that they sucked and that if they just stuck with the task, they would get good. I liked sales because I was good at sales. I like training in the gym because I know how to do it. I know how to program my workouts. I understand nutrition. But in order to get there, I had to be confused. I had to fuck up a lot. I had to do a lot of sales call role plays in my college where the professors were like, that was awful. And that didn't feel good. But I put my ego aside because a lot of things are just, as we alluded to earlier, time on task over time. And you may find a career field that somewhat interests you. And if you can just stick with it, you will get good at it and in turn like it and in turn seek a sense of fulfillment from it. And a lot of people want success, the success or the end product, but they don't want to take the route that that you took to get there, right? People ask me all the time, how do I get big on social media? I say, well, I post every day, 1 to 3 times a day. I haven't missed in a year. I do like dozens of pieces of content a week, and they go, well, I can't do that. Okay, well, I would argue it's the easiest part is just make a 12-second video if you have to. The point is, a lot of people aren't willing to go through the path of being bad at something because they can't remove their ego from the very thing. But if they can, I think there is tremendous, tremendous power in that. I don't know if I've cracked the code. Maybe you have, and you can talk on it. How do you get, maybe a young guy or someone even our age or older to accept that that is just the reality of the situation?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I actually didn't used to have. I talk a lot. I think 15 was a very pivotal year in my life because, and I know that's young. And so a lot of people will be like, bro, you were just a kid. I was like, yeah, I was. But that's when I decided to start going to the gym. And prior to that, I tried every sport and I quit every sport, and I didn't like every sport exactly for the reason you said, and that's because I wasn't good at any of them, and I didn't put in the effort to get good at any of them. I like throw a football and I can't throw a spiral, and I'm like, well, that wasn't fun. And so I learned it personally through going to the gym and doing that every day and starting. I remember, when I first was working out, some of my friends, who I'm still very close to this day, my high school friends, were like, oh, you're going to look like a hungry skeleton, like blah, blah, blah. Basically saying that how I was today, kind of confirming my identity on day one and saying that's what I'll be forever. And things felt, I couldn't do a pull-up, like so many humiliating things. And it was through the gym that I was able to learn how to love something that maybe I didn't love at the beginning, but also exactly that, be humble in the face of basically failure. And your body doesn't change for probably 8-10 weeks of working out every single day, which is why a lot of people quit before then. And so it was that was how I learned it. And I don't know if the gym would be the answer for everyone. I think it is a great example of that. But because I have that example of the gym, I'm able to stack that on other things, whether it was, coding, and I started coding in college and freshman year, and that's behind in a lot of ways, especially now. And I use air quotes because it's not, you can start whenever and learn whenever. It's just a skill like any other skill. But a lot of people in my classes were better at coding, which means I had to work harder on it at the beginning. And coding is one of those things that it is very non-intuitive. Like it really scratches a different part of the brain. And so a lot of people really struggle with it. And a lot of people, again, will quit because they can't get to that stage where it starts to make sense because they didn't put in the hours to do that. But because I could borrow on the gym, now I could put in the effort to learn coding. Same thing with social media, same thing with everything. So I think you almost need like a catalyst and then a snowball to where once you've proven to yourself that you can do that thing, then it becomes a lot easier. So most tangible advice would probably be pick something. And even if it sucks for 3 months, 6 months, I'll say 3. I think if you dedicate yourself to doing something for 3 months and you actually analyze, it could be League of Legends. I don't care what it is. A lot of people will sit there and they'll play a video game and they won't even get any good at it. And they'll spend thousands of hours and they'll mindlessly do it. Analyze, what did I do wrong? How can I get better? And if you do that for 3 months, you'll start to realize, wow, I have this ability to hone my skills at something. And then you'll probably realize I enjoy it now on the back end more than I did on the front end.
Yeah. What value can be gained from the translation of a long-term skill is impossible to explain. And that's why the gym was the same microcosm for me. I think the gym is a great microcosm for life, as you alluded to, because it teaches you the power of sticking to something long-term. In one of your podcasts, you said, I worked out for 18 months and I didn't look that different. And if I would have given up, I wouldn't be 215 pounds lean and jacked because I didn't see the return. It took me years. And what is so difficult for people to understand, because it is abstract, is the concept of you have to be. Hormozy has this great quote where he says, the world belongs to those who can work without the expectation of a result from that work and continue to do so. And if you can continue to work on something, anything, for years, every single day the odds get a little bit better that you are where you want to be, whether it's social media, training in the gym. I honestly think the physical body is the easiest way to start. So if you don't know where to start, your physical body is the place. It's the easiest, lowest barrier to entry. Get a freaking $10 a month gym membership, go 3 to 5 days a week for a year. and just watch how your mind changes. Everything changes for you when you have some sort of catalyst to teach you, oh, the things in life, as you say in your videos, all the things in life worth having, the physique, the business, the car, are either difficult, boring, or both. And people have a hard time accepting that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that alone, that sense, it challenges a lot of people, which is kind of the point, because people look at the people that they want to be like and assume that there is something different about them. That they enjoy pain, or they enjoy the things that one that I get all the time is like, oh, I'm just not good at math, or I don't like math. It's like, you think I loved doing math every single day? Like, no. Like, everyone has things that they don't want to do, and I say that the people who the people who have the things you want are also doing the things you don't want to do. And I think that's really important to understand, that the people who have the great job or whatever, it's not like they just, or the great physique, it's not that they literally are just so fired up to go to the gym every single day, whether it's sick or whether they're sick or they're cold or they just went out drinking the last night. It doesn't matter. They don't want to go to the gym every day. And in fact, the reason why they look the way they do is because they went when they didn't want to, way more than the people who would quit when they didn't want to.
Yeah, the difference between you now and the you that you want to be disciplined or motivated or have the physique is 50 to 100 instances of saying yes to the thing you need to do when you most want to say no. That's the secret to discipline, is this is the last fucking thing on the planet that I want to do today, and I went anyway. If people can do that 50 to 100 times and feel that win, you start to understand, one, everything in life is an opportunity cost. And I understand now the me on the other side of going to the gym versus the opportunity cost of like what I give up by skipping when I feel like it. It's a no-brainer choice. I would always rather go and even get a shitty workout in than have the feeling of I could have gone, like there was nothing really preventing me, because every single time you do that, you are, whether you realize it or not, putting a little slash in your self-confidence. And it's showing up for yourself will ultimately change your life in every facet. And that's, as we close the show out, that's a recurring theme I like to ask people that come on the show is the goal of this podcast, the page, is all simple. It was the first sentence I ever thought of. It was sharing easily implementable ways to improve your life. So whether it's moving up in the corporate world quickly, whether it's becoming a more purposeful, driven person, what are 3 to 5 things you would recommend people start doing today that could easily improve their life?
Yeah. I think I'll pick something that literally everybody can do. And I know we talk about this all the time, but get a system in order for, I would say, your physical health, but it bleeds into everything. If you have terrible sleep, focus on your sleep. And that doesn't mean to get all the gadgets and everything. I mean, go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time, make sure it's enough hours of sleep. I think that alone, I notice, because when I go off track, then I'm lower motivation. I have a little bit more brain fog. I'm not working as effectively. I have less desire to go to the gym, and so many things that I was like, wow, I say that good sleep is the closest thing that we have to a real superpower. And there's a lot of science to show that bad sleep is as bad for you as many things like drinking, smoking, etc. And so if there's one easily implementable thing, I would say, if that means that you have to figure, like, a lot of people, it's rare. I would say that there's only probably 1% of people listening that truly couldn't sleep at least 6 hours a night because of their schedule, kids, whatever it is. But for the other 99%, 6 hours should be your absolute minimum, and focus on that. And if you have good sleep for a month, 2 months, 3 months, that alone, I think, will do so much for the rest of your life.
Dude, I'm so glad you said that, and not even hone your communication skills, get fit. That's all inferred through what we've talked about. And like you said, the literature supports this. I have never felt more like a superhuman than when I'm averaging 7.5 to 8 hours. And that's something, transparently, I could be far better at and better about. Everybody could. But dude, you'll be amazed at what it does. It helps regulate your appetite. It will help you stay leaner. There's research to support that if you're trying to lose weight, you'll lose more muscle if you don't sleep enough as opposed to body fat. Your motivation will be higher. Your mental health is better. Everything is so much better. So, dude, that's a great piece of advice. But the question the people really want to know. It's me. I'm the people. What'd you think of the new Big X album?
Dude, I've been bumping it. I was literally listening to it on the way on the car ride here. I was listening to it in my workout yesterday. I was in. It was so funny. I was in Austin last week, Austin City Limits, the music festival there, and a bunch of artists, great artists. But my favorite part is as we were leaving, there's those. I don't know if you know, like basically people on bikes that will have like the carriages in the back that people can like rent for
Rickshaws.
Yeah, basically. And so they would be taking people where it's like really crowded, but all of them were, for some reason, I don't know if they coordinated this, were bumping Big X's new album. I swear to God, because Big X is from Texas.
Yeah.
And so my favorite part was when we were leaving, getting to hear Big X on the walk away from ACL after listening to artists live in person.
That's hilarious, dude.
Yeah.
That album's crazy. You texted me the screenshot as soon as I land. Time to bump this shit.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, man, where can the people find you if this is their first time seeing you?
Yeah, absolutely. Baxate, that's Baxate, Carter on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, and other Spotify podcast platforms. I want to post more on my YouTube, and work is really busy right now. But I want to get, this may have motivated me to get back into that as well. But Baxate Carter on all platforms.
Hell yeah! Thanks for being here, brother. I
Dude,
appreciate
I
you, man.
appreciate you having me on. It's always a pleasure, and hopefully we'll be, we had a crazy previous year. We did this podcast on my podcast almost a year ago. Maybe we don't have to wait a year next time, but I'm excited to see what both of us are doing this part of 2025.
Yeah, man. Maybe part 3 we can actually catch up on what's happened in our life because we get straight into the meat here.
That's right.
All right, brother. Thanks for being here. And rate the show. Follow it if you haven't so we can get the message to more people. I appreciate it.